What's up, guys? Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling, and today we are talking Wrestling Dynasty, the show where AEW and New Japan collide. And also sort of Stardom and CMLL, but not really them. The main focus was on AEW and New Japan. This show felt like more of a Forbidden Door opening than Forbidden Door did in 2024. Every match on the card was interpromotional, mainly New Japan versus AEW, but there was a little bit of those other companies thrown in there as well. And it was sort of refreshing to see because last year's Forbidden Door featured a lot of AEW talent and not a lot of interpromotional matches. The only interpromotional match that really felt big from last year's Forbidden Door was Zack Sabre Jr. versus Orange Cassidy, whereas this card had a lot of big matches, but not really any all-time classics that you would hope. There wasn't really a lot of matchups you could see on this card where you said, this is a main event talent from AEW, and this is a main event talent from New Japan, and now they're coming together. It was like a top star from one promotion facing a mid-carder from the other. And even if you take an example like Kenny Omega versus Gabe Kidd, to say Gabe Kidd is a main eventer in New Japan or he's on the level of international stardom that Kenny Omega is a little bit ridiculous. Even though I love Gabe Kidd, I think that's a little bit ridiculous. And that's sort of present throughout the show from both ends, where you have a major New Japan star, mid-card AEW talent, or the inverse is true. So it never had that star aura which really powered the first Forbidden Door. But that's not to say this was a bad show. This was a consistently very good show that had some really high peaks and peaked heavy in one spot with a match of the year contender. We're going to go through every match on the card. I'm going to give an overview of what happened as well as my star ratings on a scale of 1 to 5. If you like the video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment, as it really does help a new channel like mine to grow. But with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into it with our first match on the pre-show. We're starting on the pre-show with a four-way women's match: Athena versus Willow Nightingale versus Momo Watanabe versus Persephone. The winner of this match getting a title shot at whichever company they would like who's participating in this pay-per-view. And this felt like it should have been a bigger deal than it was. It getting thrown on the pre-show really diluted this match. It sort of gave it this feeling like this was just any other match you could see on any random episode of Dynamite or episode of New Japan Strong. It diminished the star power of the women who were in this match, and it sort of just felt inconsequential. And there wasn't really a whole lot to this match. This is not the kind of match that favors certain wrestlers. Like Momo Watanabe, being a Stardom wrestler, doesn't normally excel in this setting where it's a bunch of people in the ring at the same time. They're more like singles, tag, trios matches are more where she is able to shine. Like if you go back and watch her match with Mayu Iwatani from last year, phenomenal. She shines in a single setting, but this just wasn't her kind of match. And a similar thing with Willow Nightingale. I love Willow in singles matches, but whenever I see her in these sort of fatal four-way matches, she never looks very good. Athena was absolutely incredible in this match, and this was my first time seeing Persephone. I was impressed, I guess, to a certain degree, but really she sort of just looked like any other wrestler you'd see on the indies. So I think this match didn't really accomplish the goals that it was supposed to, either setting up a credible contender in the winner of the match or introducing new stars to the fan base. I think it failed on both accounts. So Momo won with a bat shot to Athena. I was hoping Athena would win because she's really the star in this match, who I think is the most talented and who I would like to see parlay this into a title shot down the line. But if Momo does something with New Japan, uses it for a match with Mayu Iwatani, or even goes to AEW and has a match with Mercedes or Mariah, I think it'll be a great match. So this match was fun in parts, but pretty sloppy and pretty disjointed as well. I gave it 3.25 out of 5 stars. Next up was a match for the Ring of Honor tag titles. It was the Sons of Texas, Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara, taking on House of Tortures, Sho, and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. And a very two-footed match because on one hand, I don't watch Ring of Honor, so this is the first time I've seen the Sons of Texas in action, and I really liked them. I thought there was a lot to love from them in this match. But on the other hand, you have the House of Torture, who are not good in any means. And Sho and Kanemaru are probably the two best wrestlers in that faction, but really just the style that they wrestle in and the psychology they use in matches detracts from it a lot. So when Sons of Texas were on top, it was really a lot of fun, but when House of Torture took back over, it really slowed down and it was a slog. And I feel like this match had a pretty fairly like normal tag build to it where the baby faces start off hot, then the heels take over, and when House of Torture took over, it just completely sucked the air out of everything that this match had to offer. So very high highlights with Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes. I'll probably actually go out of my way to watch some of their other stuff now in Ring of Honor on the future. I was that impressed by them in this match, but House of Torture dragged this match down 3.25 out of 5 stars. We are now on to the main show proper, and we're starting with the Lucha Gauntlet match, which was won by Taji Ishimori. And this was sort of a Royal Rumble style match where competitors entered at regular intervals, came in, did a lot of their big moves, and then would just go on the outside and sell for like 5 minutes until it was their time to be involved in a spot again. And there was a lot to like in this match. Mascara Dorada was a particular standout for me, and I know I'm saying that name very American in Mascara Dorada. He was a standout. A lot of fun, fast-paced stuff, a lot of high flying throughout, as you would expect from a lot of competitors in this match. But I feel like it also suffered from the speed that it was setting up, because there was a lot of times when you would just see guys standing in the middle of the ring waiting to do their spots because they had to sort of come in at just the right time and they had to be just perfectly timed, and a lot of times they weren't. It was really sloppy throughout, not in terms of the execution of moves, but in terms of the timing. And you could just see when two guys were in the ring fighting each other, all the other guys on the outside of the ring just looking at them, waiting for their turn to come in and do their spot. So it was a fun match, but it had some major structural problems. It nowhere reached the heights of great lucha libre matches that you would see in like a normal CMLL 2 out of 3 falls match. So I gave this another 3.25 stars, and I promise I'm not just going to give every match 3.25. We've had 3 in a row, but that's because the show's sort of gotten off to a little bit of a slow start. Next up was Hiroshi Tanahashi going against Katsuyori Shibata in an exhibition match. And I don't know what the purpose of this match was, because an exhibition match is usually two young lions, people fresh out the dojo, going out there on a card and just sort of presenting who they are to the crowd. 5-minute time limit, usually not a lot of big moves in there, just a lot of chain wrestling and rest holds pretty much. So for 2 stars on the level of Tanahashi and Shibata, I have no idea what this served other than Tanahashi wanted to be in the ring with Shibata again. Cool, I guess, but nothing really to this match. They had a chop battle at the end that was cool, I guess, but there was really nothing to this. I don't know why I watched this. I don't know why it was on my screen. 2 stars. Next, we had a title for title match, Mercedes Mone facing Mina Shirakawa. And it was a fine enough match, but it never really felt like I was watching 2 world-class women's talents like I should feel when watching these 2. This felt sort of like a match I would see on NXT, really. And NXT has a great women's division, so that's probably not even a fair comparison. It was just, there was a lot of sloppiness in here, and it felt like there wasn't really that instant connection that Mercedes has had with people like Chris Statlander or in Mina Shirakawa. Like, she didn't have that chemistry she had with Tony Storm. It just felt like they couldn't really find the space to work with each other. There was a lot of mistiming and a lot of bad spots in here. And that's not an insult to either women. I just feel like they weren't on their A game on this night. After about 5 to 8 minutes, the action did start to pick up, and both in kayfabe and the shoot execution of the moves, it really started to get hot. Once they started going more to the top rope and the bigger, higher spots, it got a lot more interesting and a lot more to the level you would expect of these 2 women. They sort of found the connection. It seems like within the first 10 minutes, they were sort of working out some of the bumps and some of the grooves that existed in between their 2 working styles. And eventually they were able to smooth those out and approach greatness. But that period really couldn't overshadow what was at the beginning. It was hard to overcome sort of that stagnant, oh, this isn't really as good as we were hoping. This isn't either women's best match. This isn't to the quality you'd expect of them. It just, it was hard for them to overcome that feeling they set up initially once they actually started working really well together and having some hot action. So I gave it 3 3/4 out of 5 stars. The final couple minutes were probably in the 4 star range, but the first bit of the match brought it down a little bit for me. Next, the show kicked it into high gear with David Finlay versus Brody King. And this match graphic reminds me of something you would see on like night 10 of the G1 Climax, where they got their big matches out of the way early and they're saving the bigger matches for the end as well. So you're sort of just in this middle liminal space where they're throwing random stars together. And this is one of those matches where you go, oh, okay, yeah, those two guys. Yeah, I guess that'll be fun. That'll be, yeah, those are two really great wrestlers, and they wrestle in sort of a similar style. So I feel like they would really mesh well together. It's one of those sort of strange pairings that you don't realize you want until you get it. And man, did I want it, and I want more because this match was awesome. I thought this was like a sneaky great combination to put on this card because David Finlay is such a great bumper and a great seller. He's so underrated in that department. And I feel like I'm saying that so much in these New Japan videos lately, just putting across how great David Finlay is. So he can really sell a lot of Brody King's offense in incredible ways. But he's also a really big guy and he's really strong and he can level up to that sort of Haas position that a lot of Brody King's fights with big guys get into. So he was the perfect foil for Brody, who was just hitting all the power moves you could want him to hit in this match and just looked so incredible. Really filled his role too as being the dominant guy who was sort of taking David to the cleaners in many portions of this match, only for Finlay to have to find creative and sneaky ways to come back. This felt like a really great C2 match that you would expect from the Continental Classic, where they put it out there and two guys are just giving it their all, trying to give the best performance they possibly can, and they over delivered by a mile. It was just a testosterone ride of a match that just dumb jock guys would really like when they're just beating the hell out of each other, doing these big power moves. But even having said that, I don't feel like it quite reached its peak. This match could have used another 2 or 3 minutes to really start doing some big false finishes off of some big spots to really give it that era of like or that aura rather of a classic, that match that you would go back and rewatch years from now because it's just so much fun. You know, like Goldberg versus Lesnar at WrestleMania 33, where you went, they just threw everything out there, gave the audience everything they could want. I don't think it quite reached that, and it didn't really have a ton of drama over who would win the match. Everyone knew Finlay was winning, and they didn't really do a good job about convincing you otherwise within the body of the match. So very, very fun. That's what I'll say about this. It was extremely fun, but didn't quite reach the height of its potential. So I gave it 4 1/4 out of 5 stars. Next, we're talking about Claudio Castagnoli taking on Shota Umino. And this was a very good match that lacked a real spark of personality. It was all very well worked technically. Like all the moves were hit in the right sequence and everything looked impactful and they did everything they were supposed to do. It's just you could never really get excited about this match. And it might partially be because I feel Shota Umino the night before delivered kind of a stinker of a match with Zack Sabre Jr. And now you could tell he was going to get his heat back in this match by getting a win over one of Jon Moxley's boys. But it just never had any uniqueness. The crowd wasn't into it. I wasn't into it. It never really had a spark of life to separate it from anything else on the show. And there's sort of this indifference to Shota Umino at the minute, both from myself and from the crowd, where his matches, you just sort of watch them go on in front of you and you go, yep, okay, this is all good, but I don't love it. And I don't know why necessarily. Like, I'm not connecting with Umino as a wrestler or as a character. And this is the second night in a row when he's been put in a high profile, prominent match. And I've just sort of gone, okay, sure, he's good. He's very good. But he doesn't have the intrinsic ability to connect the crowd and pull them into the drama of his match. And this was just sort of a very good match that happened in front of me. 3 3/4 out of 5. In some matches, the predictability can often detract from the drama that the wrestlers try to create. Like, you know who is going to win going in. So some of the near falls at the end, you can't really bite on and you can't take seriously. But that was definitely not a problem in Konosuke Takeshita versus Tomohiro Ishii. You knew Takeshita was winning from the beginning. You knew there was no chance Ishii was going over, but they did such an incredible job about shedding the predictability away with some of the near falls towards the end. And even if you didn't believe Ishii was going to win, you were thoroughly entertained throughout the entirety of this match. Ishii is just an absolute wizard when it comes to these strong style matches. It doesn't matter how old he is or how unlikely you think it is that he's going to win. He is able to find that incredible chemistry with anyone he's in the ring with to really put over that this is a fight and that I have a chance to take away the gold. And Takeshita, since coming into New Japan, has slotted in so perfectly into any kind of match you could put him against. He can have the super indie hybrid style with Yota Tsuji or this hard-hitting brawl of a match with Ishii. They just match so well together, and this match was just awesome. It started out with immediate fireworks, and they were just able to hold that throughout the entire 15-minute runtime of this match. It was the perfect undercard match where it doesn't go past its welcome and really get into that territory of a legendarily great match, but it gives you this sort of undercard fun to really keep fans invested and get them on the hook for some of the action that's going to come later. It was hard hitting, it was nonstop action throughout, and I don't know why Ishii is not a staple of New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2024 with a roster that needs more depth like he can bring, but he's going over to AEW and Noah. New Japan has to get him on the books on every possible show because he always delivers great matches. And wrestlers of these two caliber, Takeshita and Ishii, are necessary to elevating New Japan back to the position it was 5, 10 years ago. Absolutely phenomenal match. I would love to go back and watch it again. I probably will tonight, and I recommend you go out of your way to watch it as well. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next, we had a match for the vacant IWGP Tag Team Champions. It was the Young Bucks taking on the United Empire, represented by Jeff Cobb and the Great Okan, as well as LIJ, represented by Tetsuya Naito and Hiromu Takahashi. And this match was solid. That was probably the best way to describe it. It wasn't thrilling like some of the classic Young Buck matches are. It wasn't blow away insane. How did they do the spots that they did? It was just solid throughout. The action was never great, but it was also never terrible. Except when Naito was wrestling, but other than that, it was never terrible. There was just a bunch of signature spots incorporated throughout this match where it's everything you would expect to see from these guys in this kind of match without anything added on top of it to really make it special. But everything that you did see was executed well and sequenced well in a way that really dragged you into the action. And I'll say, even though the Young Bucks are in this match, Jeff Cobb was the definite standout for me. Just so fun, so charismatic, so entertaining throughout. He brought the fun energy that matches like this thrive on, and not a lot of the other wrestlers in the match tried to. One compliment I'll give this match is they did a fantastic job about keeping you guessing throughout about who would win. Because I genuinely had no idea who was going to win in this match. I went in thinking it would probably be LIJ, hoping against hope that it wouldn't be, but I thought it might be them. And they just did a fantastic job about going, oh no, Jeff Cobb's going to get the win. Oh no, the Young Bucks are winning. Oh no, here's Takahashi. He's going to get the win. And just ping ponging that back and forth. They really did a good job about keeping me guessing. So credit to them for that. Near falls didn't really have the desired effect the entire time. When it was the Young Bucks, it did, because I was like, oh, the Young Bucks are going to win. Oh, they just They just barely missed it. Someone broke it up. But pretty much when it was any other team, I was going, oh, not this team, not this team. Oh, thank God it wasn't that team. Like when Naito was getting a pin or the Great Okan was getting a pin, I'm like, these guys are boring. Don't make these guys one of your top champions. Just give it to the Bucks, please. And they did that in the end. So I really was looking for one outcome from this match, and they gave it to me. So I should be happy about that. But I couldn't really invest in a lot of the drama because from an outside of kayfabe perspective, not like I wanted to support the Young Bucks and I thought they're my favorite tag team. I just really didn't want to see Naito or Great Okan in the tag title picture. I wanted them as far away from it as possible. So it had the wrong kind of heat, in my opinion. I gave it 3 3/4 out of 5 stars. Next, we're looking at Yota Tsuji taking on Jack Perry. A very quiet crowd for this match for some reason, and I don't think it was because there was a lack of investment in this match. Yota Tsuji proved the previous night that he was a mainstay of the New Japan main event scene, and the crowd reaction at Wrestle Kingdom for him was huge. Like, people are behind him. People love Yota Tsuji and want him to be one of the top guys. And Jack Perry, similarly, when he was wrestling in New Japan, was always very effective at getting heat. He was always able to make the crowd boo him, but not detract from the match he was in like most members of House of Torture. So I don't think this match was quiet as a result of a lack of investment in the characters. I think it was just because the crowd had sat through so many banger matches, they were just tired. And that's sort of a shame because these two guys worked really well together. They didn't have an incredible match. They didn't tell an incredible, unique story. They just worked very well together, strung together some really cool sequences where they incorporated each other's offense uniquely into the counters and the setups for each other's moves. I thought, really, for sort of like an undercard match for a title, this is exactly what you would want from a match. This was a 4-star quality match, but really the lack of crowd investment sort of sucked the life out of all the action, and you couldn't really get invested in the big spots as a result. So I gave it 3 3/4 out of 5 stars. Next, the match that everyone was waiting for, the match that's been given the most praise, the most highlight coming out of this show. It's Kenny Omega versus Gabe Kidd. The return of Omega to New Japan in like a year plus. The last match I can remember him having was against Ospreay at Wrestle Kingdom 2 years ago. And really a star-making performance for Gabe Kidd, putting him against one of the top stars and just having, I can't even say a great match because that's sort of, I've called other matches on this card great matches. This was a legendary match, an all-timer match. I'll tell you right at the top, this is a 5-star match. I gave it 5 stars. It over-delivered in every possible way. And I'm not going to go through the match piece by piece where I identify every single thing I loved about it because we'd be here for an hour. I'm just going to go through and do bullet points, the highlights of the card, piece by, not the card, of the match, sort of piece by piece. And I'm not going to cover everything that was great. You just have to go out and watch it for yourself to really find that out. But here are some of the things that I really think cement this as a 5-star match. Gabe Kidd coming out as sort of the New Japan stalwart with the Young Lion logo on his shorts, really being the guy who is dedicating his entire life to this brand and being the all-consuming babyface on the night as a result, going up against Kenny Omega, who's sort of a interloper who was the best thing in New Japan, but then he left and started taking stars with him, Okada and Ospreay and Shibata and all these guys, taking them away from this promotion, and the crowd really resenting him for it. So it had a unique dynamic that I've never seen in any other match before. Commentary really put this over big as well. I know some people weren't fans of this commentary, but I loved it. Rocky Romero was sort of a stand for AEW, whereas Chris Charlton was really pushing against them and saying why he hated AEW and how much he loved Gabe Kidd for representing New Japan. And then Kevin Kelly sort of being the in-between man. I thought it was a beautiful mix of sentiments on the mic that really put over the story they were telling in the ring and really did a good job about encapsulating the feelings that the people in the arena were expressing through their noise to the match. The action didn't move towards a typical Kenny Omega 5-star match. Rather, it found a unique middle ground in between his style and Gabe Kidd's style, where it was a lot of heavy handed brawling, a lot of hard strikes, and they both integrated elements of each other's style so well into each other. And they were able to create a unique story as a result, where Gabe Kidd truly wanted to represent New Japan strong style, whereas Kenny Omega couldn't care less. He just wanted to get a win the match. And the story and the action and how it represented that story just fit together so beautifully and so perfectly. And I feel like the melodramatic tone of the match was struck so perfectly. Tanahashi crying at the end could have definitely been overkill for some people, but I thought it was pitch perfect for the story that they were telling. In New Japan, melodrama is something that is often not expressed effectively in matches, choosing to go for a real sports feel instead. But this match just kissed the tone perfectly, didn't overdo it, but gave you everything you could possibly want from it without skimping. Everything about this match was perfect. Some say this is a star-making performance for Gabe Kidd. He's been a star in my eyes for a long time, but to say this wasn't the elevation of his character and something he'll hopefully be able to carry on through 2025 and just have an incredible year, I hope that happens. I hope he can become a New Japan main eventer, transfer this into big wins in the New Japan Cup, in the G1 Climax, get some big title matches out of it. Gabe Kidd should be a stalwart in the main event picture for a long time. And Kenny is back. Get excited about Kenny Omega in 2025 because he's going to start having big matches and they're going to be incredible. Meltzer will probably give this 50 stars if he can. I can't quite go that high, but as I said earlier, this is absolutely a 5-star match from me. Chef's kiss. Go out of your way to see it if you haven't already. And now we're on to the main event, which was Zack Sabre Jr. defending the IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Ricochet. And for large portions of this match, it felt like a real fight. And of course, I'm talking about in the realm of kayfabe. You never believed they were actually shooting on each other. But they did a good job about foregoing a lot of the pro wrestling cliches you see in many matches to add this new layer of animosity to the action. Like for example, when Ricochet was in submissions at several points, he wasn't just selling on the mat. He was flailing and he was slapping Zack Sabre Jr. on the chest and actively trying to escape the submission hold where so many other people would just stand there selling it. And it did a good job about incorporating a struggle element where it didn't seem like a cooperative effort. It seemed like two guys genuinely fighting over a big prize. On the downside, I will say Ricochet tried to make himself seem like a badass in this match, and a badass Ricochet is not. It seemed like he was going into New Japan and saying, okay, I'm out of AEW. I'm going to shed this sort of goofy, snarky character I've been building up over the past couple months and turn into just the prototypical indie hard ass where you can brawl, you can talk crap, you can do everything. But Ricochet can't do that. There were points in this match when he was trying to egg on Zack Sabre Jr. and do some trash talking and throw some forearms, and it just seemed so fabricated. It didn't seem genuine to his character or who he is as a real person. He's just not very convincing in that role. I think this match would have been much better off if he stuck with the character he's worked on establishing over the past month or two. Apart from the character work, the physicality in this match was incredible. Every single move felt so impactful and so powerful. Zack Sabre Jr. got every single inch he possibly could off of his uppercuts, and Ricochet with his super kicks, with his boots, like an axe kick, square on the top of Zack Sabre Jr.'s head. Just everything was so picture perfect. They couldn't have gotten a single millimeter closer without shoot knocking the other guy out. It was just beautiful action. And these guys have had many, many matches in the past. They always work very well together. And this is just another example of them having a really great match. But it's sort of elevated by their new position. Zack Sabre Jr., one of the top guys in New Japan, the top guy in New Japan, I should say, and Ricochet, a main event concern in one of the biggest companies in North America. It really came together to have a great match. And Ricochet's little annoying character traits aside, this really was a great match. 4.25 out of 5 stars. Overall, I thought this was a better show than Wrestle Kingdom from the night before because this show was much more consistent, where they were able to strike a tone of greatness and really carry that throughout the show. And even when it did dip a little bit, like with Yota Tsuji versus Jack Perry, the action was still very good. Whereas on Wrestle Kingdom, when it dipped, you got something like El Desperado versus Doki, where it was just a complete flat tire of a match, or you got Naito versus Takahashi, a really sad affair, or Zack Sabre Jr. versus Shota Umino, really long and boring. That didn't exist on this card. This card, while I feel it couldn't consistently hit some of the highs that Wrestle Kingdom was able to hit, it was able to have goodness that was uninterrupted by any downsides. And it gave us an early match of the year contender in Kenny Omega versus Gabe Kidd. So I thought it was a very good show without ever really being in contention for show of the year. I don't think it'll be an all-time pay-per-view that we'll go back and remember. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think differently, and I want to know down in the comments below. Did I overhype Kenny Omega versus Gabe Kidd? Is it a 5-star match? Did I underhype anything else on this card? Could anything have approached the level of Omega versus Kidd? What about Takeshita versus Ishii? Do you think that was as good as Omega versus Kidd? I want to know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing and leaving a like, leaving a comment. It really does help a new channel like mine to grow. But with all that being said, I want to thank you guys very much for watching. I have been Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling, and I'll see you next time.